Well, thank you everybody for coming and joining us here on Webinar Ninja with Grant Worley and Gabriel Chippier. We're going to be getting into the 3 most common mistakes that course creators make and how to make sure your course is a success. I'm really excited to bring these folks in front of you today. Grant's been on our podcast, LMS Cast, a couple times. When I first came across him, what he does with monetize your expertise and really helping course creators get unstuck and create the course. He's just got a brilliant mind and strategy and execution that's happened that I've seen with his clients. And I was just really excited to do something more in depth, really training focused, because I know you guys are going to bring the goods. So Grant and Gabriel, thanks so much for putting this on and bringing the LifterLMS community along for the ride.
Absolutely. We're excited to be here, and thanks for inviting us on board. We've got a lot of really interesting things that we're going to cover today. And yeah, I think just kind of a couple housekeeping items. Well, one thing would just be, let's see, just give me, oh, that's weird. Bear with us. This is the first time using this software. So, okay, great. Can you still see the slides, Gabriel?
Looks good. I can see the first slide.
Okay, great. So just a couple housekeeping items. We're shooting for 45 minutes in terms of the core content that we're going to go through today. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and I would definitely appreciate it if you guys could, if you have a pen and paper, like get it out, be ready to take notes. If you've got a cell phone, put it on airplane mode, just to make sure we can get the most out of this experience. And we're going to be doing our best to make sure we can answer all your questions and basically give you as much advice as we can based on our experience having built lots of different courses over the years. And one thing that we wanted to do just as kind of a special thing to incentivize people to stick around, because I know everyone's busy, but for anybody who sticks around to the end, we're going to do a kind of giveaway for one of you guys to have an opportunity to have a one-on-one session with both me and Gabrielle and sort of talk about your specific course specifically, give you as much value as we can. So please do stick around to the end and you'll be eligible for that. So first off, a little bit about me. I'm the founder of Monetize Your Expertise. We oftentimes just call it MYE for a cool acronym. Basically, I started the company about 6 years ago because I saw the trend of online learning and online education in business, and basically just noticed the fact that there's so many people trying to build courses, and there weren't really that many good service providers of organizations to actually help people do it, to actually execute the content creation, graphic design, helping setting up things like LifterLMS for our clients. So that's what we started doing about 6 years back. And the idea behind that, sort of the mission behind the company, is to basically give the ability for the best thought leaders on all the different topics that exist to be able to distribute their ideas most effectively, so that anybody with an internet connection is never more than a few clicks away from the best ideas on any topic, which is the power of educational technology. And I'll let Gabrielle talk a little bit about herself as well.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Gabrielle. I'm the LMS expert and content specialist here at Monetize Your Expertise. I'm an award-winning web and instructional designer. I have a big soft spot for anything Star Wars related, and I have way too many pairs of glasses. My discovery of Zenni Optical definitely fueled that addiction. I'm, as I said, the LMS expert. When I was 24, I was actually headhunted by Shell Canada, and they needed someone with my web and design experience to help them change their mostly in-classroom learning into training that they could do online, because they had this big influx of a younger audience who weren't being effectively trained with their safety and process training that they had at the time. So I worked with them for a couple of years. And then once I moved on and had my family, I then took my skills freelance and decided that there was a lot of need in the market for online courses. And about a year and a half ago, I started working with Monetize Your Expertise, and we've been doing this ever since. So I'm super excited to talk more with you about this today.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabrielle. And one other thing to say a little bit about sort of what we do as an organization and sort of our team. I think when it comes to online courses, we sort of bring a unique perspective to the table. There's obviously a lot of information about there about how to do courses, how to create them, market them, set them up. And I think we kind of bring a unique perspective because most of the content around there, around that topic is from people with courses about how to create courses, or from companies like LifterLMS. And if you're going to pick between the two, definitely go with the software companies, as they typically have much better content on the topic. But one thing I think that we bring to the table that maybe is a little bit unique is that we're a service provider, so we've actually directly worked on these types of products a whole bunch of different ways, a whole bunch of different times, in all kinds of different industries. So basically, through that repetition, we've been able to build up certain processes and skill sets that I think we uniquely have that a lot of other organizations may not, because they might have worked on a couple of courses where we've worked on over 100. So I think there's some value that we're hoping to bring to the table in today's presentation, and just what we do in general to bring value from that. And to kind of dive right in here, one of the main problems in the online course industry right now is basically, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different content and sort of advice floating around about how to create courses, how to market courses, and there's actually quite a bit, particularly around the marketing side of the equation. Excuse me. And a lot of people, I think, are a bit overwhelmed with sort of the process and all the different ideas floating around. There's a lot of, if you just kind of search online courses or how to create an online course, there's so much different advice, so many different things you need to think about when you're going about creating and marketing courses. And just to kind of list off some examples of the different things that you might need to consider as you're going to make a successful course product is everything from the way you're going to structure the content, how many modules, how many lessons. Are you going to have associated PDFs associated with each video lesson? How much are you going to price it? How are you going to set it up? Is it going to be on a WordPress plugin or a cloud software delivery system? Is it going to be dripped out? Is it going to be evergreen? How are you going to market? Are you going to use webinars, email marketing, social media? You see how it kind of just goes on and on, right? And so if an individual is sitting down and trying to create a course, you can see how that might be a little bit overwhelming, because you essentially have to be an expert in everything under the sun, from the actual topic of your course to the process of creating courses to basically being an internet marketing guru just to kind of make it work as well. And so that's why we're trying to simplify things and help you guys out, because there's so many different areas to focus on. And to frame that a little bit more specifically, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the concept of decision fatigue. And again, basically, when you're thinking about a course, there's so many different decisions you need to make in terms of the different things that you need to focus on, how you're going to go about each of those things. And basically, a good way to think about it is if you were to imagine being at the end of a very long day, you've been working 14 hours straight, you haven't really eaten anything, and you're basically needing to make some decisions at the end of the day, and you're totally exhausted. What's going to be the quality of your decisions at that point? Probably not very good, right? So in a way, course creators are essentially creating that kind of circumstance in a similar way for themselves. So we have a couple sort of techniques to approach that, deal with that, and basically, beat the decision fatigue or the overwhelm of all the different things you need to think about. And so that's what we're going to get to as the first thing for today. So diving into number one, there's two primary techniques that we advise a lot of our clients, or just people who follow us in general, to approach this and try and avoid that type of overwhelm or just getting stuck. The first is basically to think about what you're doing as a first draft sprint. So one of the things that happens with a lot of the people that we've talked to, in some cases, it's a client who went about trying to create a course, and oftentimes they're very perfectionist. I imagine that basically a lot of people here today are, they want to create a really awesome product. They don't want to do something mediocre. They want to have every aspect of it perfect. So one of the things that might happen is that they're a little bit stuck on how to actually get it done because they're trying to make sure everything is perfect along the way. So one of the things that's a really effective technique to get around that is basically to just take it as a first draft sprint. So if you imagine somebody who's writing a best-selling novel, the first thing that they did, right, they drafted up a rough draft of it. They didn't, write a best-selling novel the first time they did it. So if you think about how much time they might have spent on the first draft versus editing at a later date, and sort of the two different ways you can approach it, right? Sitting down, staring at a blank screen, trying to create a perfect product from the get-go, that's really hard. And that's something that you might kind of get stuck and hit a wall, staring at the blank screen, the white screen of death with the flashing cursor, trying to think of things to write. And so basically, if you think about it like trying to get the first round out, the first draft, the first version of the product out, so that you can get it out in the world, start getting feedback, start selling initial versions of it, and start learning from the market in terms of like what works, how can you improve it, and how can you make it perfect? Because the best way to do that is actually get it out in the world. Cool, and just a quick side note, I noticed Arnold said he's not able to hear the audio. Just wanted to check in and make sure everyone else is able to hear the audio as well. Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Just wanted to check. Okay, so to dive into a little bit more detail about that, basically, the idea would be to set up a period of time where you're trying to, again, sit down, produce the first version of the product, get it out as fast as possible. And that oftentimes, that might sound like a haphazard way of doing things, and it might make you a little bit hesitant because you might think you're going to produce something mediocre. But if you kind of think about it in the sense that trying to make it perfect from the get-go just creates barriers, creates resistance. And so you want to sit down, block off a period of time, and, for example, create the curriculum of the course in one go. This might be like a week, might be 10 days. Set aside a specific period of time, give yourself a deadline. It'll force you to sit down, get it out. And then again, from there, you can take it in chunks and get feedback and make sure it's great at the end of the day. So some examples of what that might look like would be basically sitting down, blocking off a chunk of time to create the curriculum. So maybe you set 3 days for that. Once you create the curriculum, maybe one of the next steps is setting aside time to shoot the videos. Maybe you set aside a couple, 3 days to shoot and edit the videos. Maybe one of the next steps is creating supplemental materials for the video lessons, and you set aside 3 days to sit down and do that. You can see how just breaking it down into these chunks where you're sprinting through these stages to get it out in the world can be very effective to help overcome that kind of resistance that gets a lot of people stuck and never getting it out at the end of the day. One of the examples of sort of the contrasting version of this is we've had a lot of clients who sort of ignored this kind of approach and basically tried to sit down and create something perfect on the first go. And so they'd kind of get hung up on very, very small minutia type details that actually weren't really that important. And all they did was essentially just create barriers. So for example, spending copious amounts of time trying to figure out what synonym for a particular word is best. What about the grammar on the curriculum, which isn't even going to be shown in the course? It's just the structure of the course content. And spending hours or days kind of thinking about really small things like that, which aren't even that important and will actually be resolved by getting it out the door. So just kind of as an example, I'm sure some of you can sort of empathize with having experiences like that. So basically, wherever you are at in the course creation process, whether you have an existing course that you're trying to refurbish and get out, which is one of the things we'll actually talk about in a little bit, or if you're trying to create your first course, basically whatever the immediate next step that you need to do, set aside a specific amount of time, a deadline where you have to get it out the door. And ideally, it's something that after that deadline, you have it scheduled to show to somebody to get their feedback. Technique number 2 would be to touch it once. So when you combine the first draft approach, the draft sprint approach with touching it once, so they kind of go together, very supplemental. So maybe you've heard of the methodology of getting things done by David Allen. One of the things that he talks about is touching it once. So for example, I think one of the examples he uses is as you're checking your email, if you go through your inbox and basically you read all your emails, but you don't actually do what you need to do with them. So you've just spent all this mental energy going through your inbox, reading all these emails, kind of having it nag at you in the back of your head what you're actually going to be doing. And at some point, you actually have to go back and do the things that you need to do based on those emails, which can be very inefficient. So similarly, if you kind of go back and fiddle with things, so all the different steps of course creation, so the curriculum, the lesson structure, the video editing, PDF downloads, things like that. If you're kind of going back and fiddling with it over and over again, oftentimes it's super counterproductive. In many cases, actually makes the product worse at the end of the day versus actually making it better. And as you can see, it also just kind of creates this ongoing, endless amount of revisions that'll kind of prevent you from actually getting out the door. So some other examples about that might be you're trying to find the perfect LMS platform to host your course through. LifterLMS is obviously a great example of that, but there's actually quite a few different platforms that you could use. And you could kind of sit down and spend days, weeks, months, years, because people like Gabrielle specialize in this and actually do that, and trying to figure out the exact perfect one to use. And researching all of them, making pros and cons lists. And at the end of the day, a lot of them can get the job done. And if you spend, so many hours trying to figure out that one aspect, at the end of the day, you're just sort of pushing the can down the road in terms of actually getting the product out. So as a specific action step that you can use to apply these two things is to basically think about the steps from where you are now to the sort of end stage of where you're trying to get to. So again, that might be getting your first course out or your next course out. Maybe you've sort of outlined it and created the curriculum, and you need to say shoot the videos, create the PDFs, and set it up in an LMS. So for each of those things, break it down, set a timeline, and set sort of caps on how much time you're able to spend on each of those, both in terms of number of hours, or maybe for each of them you need to do a little bit of research. So you set a sort of deadline of like you have 10 minutes to research each of those sort of aspects that are going to go into that next stage. And you set aside one day to work on each of those phases. And you schedule for your customers or a trusted advisor to, you schedule the call for them to review what you created at the end of that, which just forces you to get it done and have something ready to show them. That's a way you can sort of apply each of those right now based on what you're supposed to, or what you're trying to do next. One other thing I'd like to mention along the way, and actually this is something that came up a lot in the podcast interviews that we did with Chris, is basically, as I mentioned, there's so many different things that you need to think about with courses, so many different skill sets you need to do it well, that a lot of times people try and sit down and do it themselves because it's oftentimes sort of their business baby. It's sort of their lifeblood of their methodology, their unique framework that they're trying to teach to the world, and they want it to be perfect. And they want to kind of control the process along the way. But at the end of the day, I'm sure you can imagine that trying to do it all yourself can be very counterproductive. And if you're trying to do it like Han Solo, basically, there you go, there's a Star Wars reference for you. Basically just holds you back. And so what I'd encourage you to do, alongside planning out these specific steps, setting deadlines for each of those steps and an amount of time you're going to spend on each of the steps remaining, I'd encourage you also to plan to get some kind of help with the things that are going to be the hardest for you to do. We actually go into that in a lot more detail on the podcast interviews, so it's not something we have a ton of time to get into today, but just kind of have the expectation that it's going to be in your interest, your best interest, to get some help along the way. So just a quick recap. 2 techniques for overcoming the decision fatigue and the potential overwhelm of creating your first course or your next course. Set everything up as a specific first draft sprint and plan to touch it once and then get it out into the world after that. So I'm curious, does any of that kind of resonate with you guys? Is that sort of similar to any experiences that you've had? Do you see any ways that you could kind of implement some of those things going forward to kind of get that momentum going and prevent the kind of bottleneck of trying to make everything perfect from the get-go?
I love that point. I just want to add that I've definitely seen myself get stuck when by not just allowing it to be a first draft. I love that idea, Grant. Thank you for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we actually use for ourselves. It's human nature, right? All of the things that I mentioned. It's definitely not something, if that's happened to any of you guys, you should feel bad about. It's like a thing that happens to everyone almost by default, unless you kind of acknowledge that it's likely to happen and proactively kind of plan around that aspect of human nature to use it to your advantage versus having it be a constraint. So with that, the next sort of phase of this presentation is to get into 3 very common mistakes that the course creators make and some specific things that you can do for each of those common mistakes. And again, this is based on having done this over many, many years. I think we have something like 25 years of combined e-learning experience working on all kinds of different projects and all kinds of different industries. And there's a pretty specific pattern of some of the common mistakes people make, and some pretty simple things that you can do to deal with those mistakes along the way. So with that, I'll hand it off to Gabrielle for this part of the presentation.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. Thanks there, Grant. Okay, so we're going to get to the good stuff now. Now, as we mentioned before, we're in the business of creating online courses for other people. Now, we've done Dove for You services, and we work with over 100 clients in a wide variety of industries and on vastly different topics. And it's been kind of a wild ride seeing all those online courses come through our doors, because there's such a variety of topics and such a variety of ways to present information that we get to do so many cool things and present this in such so many varied ways. Now, I'm not kind of saying this to brag or as a sales pitch, but I'm saying this so that you'll understand that we have a pretty unique viewpoint, and we've seen all of these mistakes firsthand. Now, we've seen newbie course creators and experienced course creators make these exact same mistakes. And, when we were first starting out, we even made them ourselves for our clients. So we want to make sure that you don't make them in your course. And if you avoid making these 3 mistakes, you're going to get some serious course mojo going on. Now, nothing's going to stop you from hitting it out of the park on both the creation and the launch of your course if you kind of keep these in mind as you keep going. So now I know we promised a short webinar today, and we definitely want to make sure we have lots of time for the Q&A afterwards. So I'm just going to dive right in. So Grant, if you could get to the next slide there. Okay, so the first mistake we see course creators make is they have really unrealistic timelines. And many people think like, oh, no worries, I'll totally have it done next week. And, maybe in some cases they're sitting literally 2 years later without a finished or launched course. And creating a course is a big project. And if you haven't related or created one before, there's a lot of slower steps as you figure out what you're going to be teaching and how you're going to present it. Now, there's a bit of a learning curve based on the number of courses you've created in the past and how comfortable you are with creating a project of this type. Now, many of the clients we work with have started the process on their own. And then when it inevitably takes longer than they thought it would, they get really discouraged. So there are many course creators out there with half-finished, unlaunched courses because they thought it was going to be much easier than it actually is. Or, maybe someone told them on a webinar like this one that they could easily create a course in a weekend or over 10 days. Now, we have these conversations all the time with our prospective clients, and with a full team of people, it can take us several months to create a course. So what are the chances that you as an individual can do it 5 times faster than our full-time team of people who's been doing this, like Grant said, for, combined of 25 years? Do you want to go to the next slide there, Grant? Now, don't get me wrong, it is conceivably possible for you to create an online course in 10 days. Now, I definitely wouldn't say you could do it in a weekend, though, unless it's a very mini course and you probably didn't come up for air that entire weekend. But here's the thing, in order to cut down your course creation timeline to something like the 10 days that people are saying, you'd have to completely drop everything else you were doing and focus entirely on that course. It would have to literally be your only project for the 10-day period, And you'd have to resign yourself to living basically like a hermit while you did it. Now, and I don't think that's really feasible for the majority of course creators. I mean, the people we work with, and I'm sure you as well, really have their own business tasks right now. They have their own clients, you're running your own business, you've got to do your own marketing, you're promoting yourself to get people into these courses and into your other products. And you don't really have that amount of time to devote specifically to one project. Now, ignoring everything else to create a course over 10 days is most likely just not practical for you. So of course, when the course inevitably takes longer than the 10 days, they scheduled for it. Or when they hit a bit of a roadblock or something comes up in their business they need to attend to, the course definitely gets abandoned and the creator starts to think that they're a failure because they couldn't make that course in 10 days. Do you want to get to the next slide? Oh, perfect. So if most people have no idea how long it really takes to create a course, and many of them get discouraged and give up halfway through, then how long should you be estimating for a project like this? Now, I mean, you want to make sure you're giving yourself enough time to get it done, but you also want to make sure you're getting it out there in the world so it can start making you money, right? Because that's why we do this. Now, there's a fine balance between the two that you have to tread. Too long, and you're liable to get hit with decision fatigue and maybe give up. And too short, and you'll be run ragged trying to create the course and work in your business or your job or see your kids and loved ones during that entire period. And, you know, some of us enjoy social lives as well, right? So you want to, good, he's on it. So we've come up with a very easy way to sum up the course creation process in a time frame that works for the average course creator. And it works to be about 10 days for every module you have in your course. Now, a quick note here, sometimes wording and naming changes from provider to provider, or depending on what tool you're using in the course industry. So I want to explain a little bit what we mean by a module. Now, in the courses we create for our clients, we call each individual piece of content a lesson, and then each lesson is contained within an overarching container that we call a module. So a module could hold one lesson or it could hold 7 lessons. But by giving a set time span for each module, you're able to more accurately see how long this course will realistically take you to complete and give yourself the much needed time to create your course and not go crazy in the process. So let's say your course has 8 modules in it. Then, realistically, you need to give yourself about 80 days to complete it. If you have 4 modules, then you need just over a month to complete it. Now, that's a far cry from the 10 days that others are telling you it can take. But it's also a more realistic timeline, and it helps you feel a lot less stressed and calmer about the whole process. Plus, and here's a hint for you, it also helps when you get to mistake number 3. So what do you think about that? Do you have any comments on that 10 days idea? Have you ever experienced that the timeline getting shorter and longer depending on how much content you have? Now, I got Grant's in the chat here with us. Cool. Okay, so we can move on to mistake number 2. So the videos are too long. Now, this one is a doozy. So one of the services we offer here at Monetize Your Expertise is called a course audit. And this is where we go through an existing course and we find ways to improve it. Now, the main focus of our audits is student retention and to increase completion rates. But we also look for tech issues or delivery issues that may come up. And we also look for ways to further refine the messaging and better communicate the value that someone is going to get from taking the course. Now, our audits have resulted in some great success stories for our clients, and we're really proud of the process that we've created to do these audits. But the number one thing that we do in almost every course audit we do, and we cut the videos down in length. Do you want to go to the next slide, Grant? So the main reason, our number one suggestion for cutting down video length is because in our experience, it directly correlates to an increased completion rate amongst the courses we audit. Now, this isn't to say that you have to rush through everything you want to say in a video in order to get it under a certain length, but rather that you should try to make each one of your videos no longer than 10 minutes and perhaps offer more videos in order to thoroughly examine a topic. Now, if a lesson needs more than one video, then that's totally fine, but each individual lesson should be no more than 10 minutes. Want to go to the next slide, Grant? So there's a few reasons why we suggest that nice 10 minutes. Oh, this says 10 days, so that was an error. Now, I think you'll all agree that these are all very good guidelines to keep in mind when you're creating your course. Now, the first reason we recommend you keep your videos under 10 minutes is because a video of that length is easy to consume. Now, when a student opens up your lesson and is greeted by a video that's an hour long, it's very easy for them to feel defeated right at the get-go. Now, one of the first things that will go through their heads when greeted with a video of that length is, do I have time for this right now? And most often, the answer is no. So when you make your videos 10 minutes or less, they're really easy to fit in around your students' existing schedule. They can watch the videos quickly in between other tasks and commitments, and it fits your course into their already busy lifestyle. Now, the last reason we recommend making your videos shorter is because it actually fuels the learner's momentum and keeps them motivated to continue. When they start completing lessons and modules quickly and move through your content that much faster, they get more and more confident that they can apply your information just as easily. It breaks down your large, overarching concepts and techniques and breaks them into smaller, bite-sized pieces that they can learn fast and apply faster. Now, this keeps them moving forward through your course content at a good pace and stops them from getting stalled at any one point because of a long video they need to figure out when they have time to watch. Now, the last reason we recommend keeping your videos to under 10 minutes is because of attention span. And I mean, we've all heard that people have attention spans the length of a goldfish. And I don't really know if that's an insult to us or to a goldfish, but the latest studies definitely aren't promising. But I personally think it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not that attention spans have decreased so rapidly, but rather that there are a slew of things constantly vying for our attention at any given point. And if it's not interesting, we simply don't make time for it. When a student is viewing your course, you have an advantage here in that they are a captured audience. They're not scrolling through Facebook, they're in your virtual classroom and they're ready to learn. So the 30-second attention span, it doesn't really apply here, but we do still need to keep it in mind. I mean, after a certain point, the average person's brain starts losing focus and they get easily distracted. After about 10 minutes, that attention span starts to decrease rapidly and the amount of knowledge retention starts to go down really fast. So by keeping your videos in that 10-minute mark, you're not only working within their attention span limits, but you're also respecting that they have other things to do, the least of which is implementing what you're teaching in your course content. Now, the best example of this is for one of our clients, Harvecker. He had some amazing courses, but they weren't doing so well in terms of completion rates. Now, we knew that when his students did complete the courses, they got some great results, but getting to that completion stage was proving really difficult. When we did his audit, we split up his 45 to 60-minute videos into smaller pieces, and his student completion rate jumped by 28%. And that's a huge, huge amount. I mean, latest studies have been saying that course completion rates are between 8 and 12%, and that's pretty small. So increasing it by 28% was a big win for them. So what do you think about that? Have you been guilty of making really long videos in the past? I know that I can get kind of wordy too, so don't worry, you're not alone there. And when we do these audits, we're not getting rid of valuable content. Essentially what we do is we just break a larger video into smaller pieces so that it's easier to consume. Same information, just much easier for people to consume and fit into their day.
Yeah, and actually just to jump in here a little bit about tying some of this together. So for example, it was coming up in the questions, for the first rough draft version of a course, do you release it and sell it? This actually ties together. Just give me a second, bear with me. But so one of the things that people often do is they have a rough draft version of a course that they kind of do as a live boot camp style thing. Many times it's like a weekly webinar. Oftentimes webinars are 45 minutes, hour and a half. And so a lot of times they record those and then that ultimately becomes the course, right? And so sort of tying it together to breaking the videos down. If you just upload, 60 to 90 minute chunks of video, then you're going to be guilty of having overly long content videos. But it's very easy to take, just thinking about this as an example, we're going to have a replay of this. We could very easily break it down into a series of videos with one video that's probably 5 minutes long for each of them, just as an example, to tie it together to a previous topic.
Perfect. Okay, well, if you want to go to the next slide, Grant, I'll get going on mistake number 3. Okay, so now that we've gone over the first 2 mistakes that many course creators make, now we're at the very last one. And this is a doozy, and it can make the difference between a course launch that is on fire or one that just kind of sizzles out. Now, this mistake ties into the first one as well, because many course creators mistakenly plan all the time for the making of the course. And then by the time they finish that, they're so burned out and overwhelmed by the process that the last thing they want to do is even look at that course again. Now, so many courses just get half-heartedly pushed out in the world without much fanfare and very little promotion. So they end up doing very poorly in the launch, and the creator gets discouraged and upset that they spent so much time on the course only to have it not sell or not meet their income goals. And this is a really real problem. Like, we've had tons of clients come to us with a finished course that just didn't sell, and they mistakenly believe it's the course itself, when the real culprit is their marketing and promotions surrounding that course. So what can you do to avoid this big mistake? Because this one's a real doozy and can not only affect if you ever create another course, but can also leave you with some serious cash flow problems if you focus so much time and energy on creating the course and it didn't give you any ROI back. So you can go to the next slide, Grant. So the best way to avoid this mistake is to plan for your promotional period when you first sit down and create your course timelines. Now, promotion shouldn't be an afterthought when creating a course. In fact, the best course launches take up just as much time and effort as creating the course itself. Many course creators take the very cliched build it and they will come mentality when they create their courses. They created it, so why wouldn't it sell, right? But the key here is that no one knows about your course, then of course they aren't going to buy it, right? And since we learned that people's attention spans are pretty short, it most likely needs to be promoted consistently and heavily for a period of time before you get some serious traction in your enrollment. Now, this isn't to make you feel defeated though. In fact, it should get you excited, because once the course is created, the marketing comes so much more naturally to any course creator. Looks like we skipped a slide, but you got a chance to read this one for a bit. So now, we love rules of thumb here at MYE, and we're full of them when it comes to planning a course launch and marketing plan. Now, there are a lot of different ways you can promote your course, and we'll be getting into those today, but because basically we could go on for like hours and hours on that. But let's break it down into a simple way of planning for your promotions so that no matter what strategy or launch plan or funnel system or promotion, process you use, you have enough time to implement it and you feel comfortable doing so without being overwhelmed or burnt out. So one of our clients used this approach on his course launch in January, and he had some overwhelmingly positive comments about it. At one point, he said, this is literally the funnest and easiest launch I've ever had so far. So in terms of timing, we always recommend that you spend about 2 weeks building up a rapport with your audience before you get into heavy promotion mode. Now, usually this means sharing bits of pieces of the course content, snippets and previews, and writing social media posts and newsletters, really doing nothing but building value and showing you're an expert in your course topic. Now, during this initial phase, you're basically placing yourself top of mind and making sure that people get used to seeing you for a bit. Now, many experts we work with use this period to establish themselves with their audience because, let's face it, when you're head down in a course project, you probably neglected your marketing and promotions, right? Now, I know I do that, and I'm certainly not the only one. So when you plan for this 2-week period where you're sharing what you know, you're building up that rapport again, and you're increasing that know, like, and trust that all the marketers are always harping on about, Then after that 2 weeks is over, then you can plan to start promoting your specific offer for the course more heavily. Now, this is where your aim is to get people to that sales page and buying. Now, you're not setting up the course you're setting up the course as the perfect solution for their problem, and you're going into the full-on launch for the course. Now, a 2-week launch window is an ideal period for you to build an interest, answer questions, handle the objections, and get people excited about your course. You want to go to the next slide, Grant? So don't worry about people getting bored of your messaging or upset about your promotions. Now, there comes a time during every launch phase, and I've seen this so many times, where you feel as though you're blue in the face from promoting the same thing over and over again. Now, you're going to assume that people are totally sick of hearing from you and that they've heard every variation of your promotional message, and they're just not interested, or maybe they're ignoring you. But trust me, for every course creator who's thought that and eased up on their promotional activities, there were members of their audience who still had no idea they were promoting something in the first place. Now, it's crazy how often we've heard stories of course creators feeling like they had exhausted their lists and that their audience, just doesn't want to hear about them anymore. And then they get an email asking them that they didn't know they had a course. So don't worry at all about overpromotion. Now, there's no such thing, and you're much better to feel as though you're over-promoting than not promoting enough and falling flat of your sales and revenue goals for your online course. So what do you think about that? Have you been guilty of maybe not promoting your course enough, or maybe getting burned out with the course creation and not leaving any time for the promoting afterwards? All right, Grant, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so how are we doing now? Can you see how those 3 mistakes can combine into a fairly unpleasant course creating experience? Now, it's no wonder that so many course creators fall flat of their goals to create and launch successful courses when they're making these mistakes over and over again. But if you're aware of them and plan for them, then you're already much better off than at least 70% of other course creators out there. So I'm going to hand it on over to Grant again, and he's going to go through a fantastic tactic that you can start using.
Great. Thanks, Gabrielle. Yeah, so to switch gears here a little bit, we can go into one of the specific things that's very straightforward and easy to do to get more students enrolled in your course. One thing, I guess, before we get into this, I think it's always very helpful to approach your marketing from a pretty objective and numerical approach. So for example, again, as we alluded to earlier, there's a lot of ideas that are thrown around in terms of what you can do with regards to marketing. But at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to a couple simple factors. It comes down to, having your course finished and ready. And then it just comes down to what's the number of people that you're going to get it in front of? How are you going to get it in front of them? And how many people do you really need to get it in front of to get the kind of results that you're looking for? And then the idea is just to sort of reverse engineer, okay, if I want 10 students in my first launch, and the process that I'm going to use to nurture them up to buying the product, how many people do I need to email or put it in front of with Facebook ads or whatever approach that you're going to use, and sort of start with that. But the specific approach that we're going to kind of go through today, which is something that's very simple and straightforward to do, and also doesn't have the assumption that you have any particular assets, is something everyone can do regardless of whether you have an email list or social media following or whatnot, is basically how to use personal email outreach or personal outreach generally, but email is a great way for doing that. So basically the concept is thinking about, and again, this is particularly good for people who do not have large followings already. If you do have a massive email list, then this is super simple. You can just release it to that group of people, but most people don't have that. So the idea is just to think about, okay, how many people do I need to that are in my target market that I need to get this product in front of, and then what's a good way to get it in front of them? And reaching out to them directly through something like email outreach can be a very effective approach. So you start by thinking about maybe your best customer and the type of person you're trying to get it in front of. And then it's a simple matter of, sending them some emails, sending them some valuable content to try and get them to express interest in what you're doing. And there's good and bad ways to do this, but the general concept for how you can do this that's very effective is to find people through some kind of attribute or behavior which indicates that they're going to be very interested in what you're doing. One specific example of this is there's a way to go on the LinkedIn Learning, the new kind of online academy thing that LinkedIn offers, and you can sort of find a course that's similar to your course and basically find all the people who liked or took the course. And if it's on a similar topic, and maybe your course goes more in depth than the LinkedIn one, there's a good chance that they're going to be very interested in what you're doing because they're actively trying to learn something about that topic. This is just one very, very specific way of doing it, just to have a concrete example, but there's literally hundreds of different ways to do it. But you can imagine, okay, so you're taking this LinkedIn course about Facebook ads. I have a course about Facebook ads. Hey, we've got a webinar, or we've got a series of blog posts to launch this course, and you can sort of send that free content to them to see if that's something that they're interested in. A couple other things about this approach. Let me see. Basically, there's a couple different ways to do it, but the idea is just to have a very targeted approach. Sort of like, you can always think about it as like a shotgun approach or a sniper approach. And especially if this is a early version of getting this out there, you want to go with more of the sniper approach, having a very, very clear idea of who you're going to try and target and how you're going to target them and sort of what is going to be interesting to them, and just to kind of hit on a couple mistakes along the way. Best practices for doing this is to think about what they care about and the value that's from their perspective versus, hey, look at my thing that I'm doing. Want to buy it? From your perspective of like what you care about, what you're trying to get them to do, versus, hey, here's an outcome that you care about. I know you care about it because XYZ way that you found them. I have a way to help you do that. And, generally it's some kind of free content, which might ultimately lead to your course. And that kind of approach can be very, very effective. In some cases, when we've done this for clients or for our own products, it can be very effective, and we can get 20, in some cases up to like 36% conversion rate of the total people that we contacted going to the materials that we were sending them, checking it out and expressing interest, opting in, going to the sales page and purchasing the product. So that's a very specific way that you can do this. Obviously, you want to start this yourself. Maybe it's something that at some point you could hand it off to a virtual assistant or do a myriad number of things to improve that process or scale it over time. But again, really great example to start things off. And there's actually other sort of use cases that you can use this approach for as well, all related to generalized course marketing. So for example, one thing that you can do is use this same approach to, again, put it in front of people who might buy your product. You can also do it to secure interviews on podcasts. And this is something I personally did several years back when we were launching a product. I basically just ran an outreach campaign, just personally emailing all the people who hosted all the industry podcasts. And it was amazing the number of people that said yes. Even very, very top podcasts, they're looking for guests. It can be very effective, also very high percentage conversion rate. Some other things that you could do is using this personal email outreach approach to invite industry experts into interviews to create bonus content for your course. You can use it to set up partner webinars, kind of actually like what we're doing now. And you'd want to reach out to people who are complementary or indirect competitors to you. So basically, people who serve your same market but don't offer the same thing as you. So for example, we offer primarily services. Chris offers primarily LMS software. Very good match, right? There's no competition there. We can both deliver value to each other's audience, and it works really well. We're both incentivized to do that. Excuse me. So when we first sort of explored this approach, we were a little bit hesitant about it because, it's pretty time consuming in some cases, and it's kind of hard to gauge the ROI, at least initially. But we did decide to bite the bullet and give it a real go. And it worked really, really well, like I said. So 20 up to 36% conversion rate from the outreach to checking out what we were sending them. And so that's, some stats for you. Obviously, there's good and bad ways to do this. Some campaigns will succeed, some will fail. But don't underestimate the one-on-one outreach approach for selling your course. Again, especially for those of you who don't have massive audiences to start, you can't do a lot of the more sophisticated internet marketing stuff where you're putting it in front of tens of thousands of people. Obviously, you'd ultimately like to get there, and that's a really great approach, but most people can't start there, and or it doesn't make sense to start there. So this is a great approach to start along the way. And to kind of wrap that up, again, what I would encourage you to do to specifically implement this is basically start with the goal that you have for your course in terms of revenue, number of students, things like that. Figure out, you can use some of these numbers, although obviously it'd be a little bit different for yours, and sort of figure out, reverse engineer how many people you need to get it in front of, and then you can set that as a target. And so, we talked about planning out the marketing timeline. If you have 2 weeks for example, to do it, and you know how many people you need to get it in front of, say you're trying to get 10 people to buy your product, and there's a 10% conversion rate of the sales page, and there's a 10% conversion from the email outreach to the sales page, then that would be about 1,000 people. And if you break that down into a daily outreach approach in terms of, divided by 2 weeks, then that can give you a specific number. And this is only using one very specific approach. Maybe email 50 people a day or whatever it is to get to that result. So that's a way to specifically implement this. Obviously, along the way, you'd want to really nail down your client avatar, come up with a very good way to get their contact information, come up with a very appealing pitch to reach out to them, and that would be a way to get this started today. So just along the way, any particular questions based on what we covered today? We covered a bunch of different things. Obviously, we'd love to actually go for many, many hours and dive into many, many different verticals. And, again, for any of these topics, we could spend hours or days discussing all the different ways to do them. But our goal for today was to cover some of the main topics, some of the main mistakes, some of the main approaches that you can start using today, and try and give you at least one sort of small step that you can take in each of the direction. So I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts have been on this so far, and basically see which of these was most valuable to you. And yeah, Gabrielle, if you want to do kind of a quick recap of some of the mistakes as well, just as a summary and next steps, that would be great.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's just do a quick overview of what we covered today. So if you want to go to the next slide there, Grant. So the first mistake course creators make is that they don't plan enough time for their course project, or they have unrealistic expectations for how long the project will take them. Now they end up overwhelmed and burned out when the course they thought would take 10 days is actually taking them 6 weeks or longer. Now the solution to that is using our rule of thumb that you should plan at least 10 days for every module of content you have in your course. Using that 10 days guideline will help you properly allot a consistent amount of time per week or day so that you can get everything done and will allow you time to run your business while you're creating this big project. Can you go to the next slide there? Now, the second mistake is that course creators make far too long of videos, and this seriously affects their completion rates and knowledge retention rates among their students. Now, I think the major goal of any course creator is to get as many success stories as you possibly can, right? But you can't get those if no one is making it through your course. By creating videos that are 10 minutes or less, you're not only going to make sure your students are engaged and can easily consume your content in and around their existing schedules, but you're going to keep them motivated to continue. Now, it was a perfect example when I mentioned Harvecker there with his course completion rates just shooting up. That's exactly a perfect example of the kind of results these sort of changes can bring to an existing course, and further proof that shorter videos are definitely better. We go on to mistake number 3. And then, of course, the very last mistake, which is course creators not planning enough time for the promotional phase of their course. When you spend so much time on the course itself, it can be incredibly easy to not have the energy to promote it properly. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons we see courses fail to generate significant revenue for the people who create them, and I don't want you to fall victim to this mistake. So when you're first planning out your course, you can use the first guideline of 10 days per module, and then you can add at least a month for promotional activities to get the overall timeline for your course from start to finish. And this way you're ready for it and you're expecting it, and it doesn't sneak up on you at the end and you think, oh geez, you mean I have to sell the thing now? So when you avoid that by having that proper plan, you've got that promotional period just like you planned for the creation stages. Now, we've spoken with and interviewed many course creators who invest all of their time and energy and resources in trying to create the product and then just run out of steam once it's done. And they move on to the next thing and it ends up sitting there. So instead, if you proactively allocate your resources for this, then the odds of your new course being incredibly successful go through the roof. And next slide there. And then lastly, Grant talked about a new technique we've been using with our own clients that has received some excellent return on investment for them, and that was personal outreach to prospective students. Now, I don't want you to discount this one. It's so easy to rely on the fancy automations and the pre-planned launch strategies when some good old-fashioned outreach will often give you a much higher return on investment. Now, we got our biggest client we've ever worked with directly from personal outreach. Now, this client has brought us 7 courses between the last year and a bit, just from personalized outreach that worked to secure this one client. And of course, some campaigns work, some fail, but just try and test and measure and see how it goes. All right, next slide. And that's a wrap. So we're all done the content portion of this webinar. Now, I hope you enjoyed what we shared with you today. And now you're armed with a lot of great strategies to both avoid these common mistakes that we see course creators make, and also some good ideas for personal outreach and ways to avoid decision fatigue so that you're creating online courses faster, easier, and you're able to get a better return on your time. So you want to go to the next slide there, Grant? If you're looking to find us online, then I'd love for you to check us out on social media and visit our website as well. We'd love to talk to you more about how we can help you with your courses, whether that's done for you services or one of our other options. And even if you just want to say hi and ask us any other questions you may have about creating online courses, because we can seriously geek out about this for hours. Can we go to the next slide? Now, if you've been enjoying the quality of this presentation, then I certainly invite you to check out our 16-week online course cohort program. It's where we personally walk 20 experts and entrepreneurs through our proven process of creating online courses. And over the course of 16 weeks, we meet weekly for group coaching calls, and you get individualized support that can make all the difference between sitting on a course and launching it. Now, if that's something you're interested in, then definitely go check out monetizemyexpertise.com/cohort, and we'd love to have you in our next run of the cohort, which starts April 15th. Okay, here comes the fun part. Grant, go to the next slide. Yay, the giveaway. Okay, so just like we mentioned before, we're going to give away one free 2-on-1 strategy session with both Grant and I. You're going to get to talk to both of us and be able to get our expert advice on your course or your course promotional strategies so you can really knock it out of the park. Now, these sessions usually sell for about $4.97, so you're getting quite the awesome prize here if you win. Now, we're going to use a random number generator that I am running it through now. And the winner is Shayna. Woo! Okay, Shayna. You have won the course strategy session. We're super excited to talk to you. And we're going to send you an email here shortly with instructions on how to book your call. Awesome. Okay, so now we can go to the Q&A. I really wanted to give a big shout out to Chris and LifterLMS for inviting us out here and having us be able to present this to you. It was super fun. I had a blast. And let's see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, so just I've been trying to keep track here. The first main one that I don't think we have answered yet, or I tried to answer, is and actually a previous question which we might want to still touch on is in terms of the getting the first rough draft version of a course out. Is that something that's sold, or is it something that's given away for free? I actually answered that one in the chat, but it might be something we want to speak towards as well. I'm curious, Gabrielle, if you have anything particular to say about that question. I already gave my answer personally in the chat.
Yeah, well, I think it really depends on the topic itself. I know a lot more technical topics need to be a little bit more polished before you can have people go through it. But if we're talking about maybe a little bit more of a personal topic or personal growth, something like that, I'm a big proponent of the beta idea. So having the first draft sprint, doing that, getting it all down as best as you can, and then selling it as a beta, just with the idea that this isn't perfect, this isn't a wonderfully polished version of it, and just seeing what the reaction is to it. Now, a lot of the times that you can just go back to a course and keep editing and keep tweaking and just making it better in every further version that you make of it. So the first draft sprint kind of talks more about your curriculum planning and your curriculum creation. Whereas when you go into the beta, that's the actual delivery of, say, not 100% polished version.
Great. And the next question that we have is basically asking for some curriculum planning resources recommended for somebody starting out, and to ask for some clarification, basically some kind of template on how to structure it. I actually posted a screenshot, so you can grab the screenshot in the chat of like sort of the first page of the actual template and SOP that we use for our clients, which should kind of give you an initial idea of some of the things that you want to do along the way, including, you can use a mind map. There's something that we call a content planner, which is sort of like a glorified spreadsheet, which basically you break down the modules and the video lessons and kind of map out which are going to be voiceover slides, which are going to show somebody's face, like a talking head type approach, which are going to be a screencast. So that's a helpful thing to do along the way, just so you're kind of organized about which approach you're going to use for which section of the course. Because in a lot of cases, there's a particular way to do it based on what you're trying to communicate. A given lesson topic might be best suited for showing your screen to show somebody how to do it. In other cases, if you're telling like a personal anecdote, using talking head would be effective. So planning that out ahead of time can be very useful. And then it also kind of the screenshot gets into how you can sort of break it down into or actually some high level details of the course, like the value proposition, your goals for the course, target audience, and then sort of breaking it down into initial structure. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. Gabrielle, if you want to kind of speak to that one a little bit more as well, or we can also move on. But basically, curriculum planning resources.
Mm-hmm. Well, the best resource that I've used throughout my instructional design career has been the concept of backwards building. Now, this is where you take you identify where your student is going to be at the end of completing your course. So what will they do? What will they know? What will they be able to create? What will they be able to build the steps to get there? So for sure. So we figure out where your student is going to be at the very end of your course, and then we build backwards from there. So you could identify some key steps from where they are now to where they will be at the end, and then just fill in the gaps. And that's a lot easier, I find, than starting from the beginning and going to the end, because there's a definite cutoff of where they're going to be. Because a lot of the courses that I've worked on in the past, you can just go on forever. I mean, you could put every single piece of knowledge on a topic in a course, but that may not necessarily be beneficial for them to get to that specific end result. So that kind of helps guide your curriculum planning a little bit better, keeps it more in scope and a little bit more contained so that you're not going off on wild tangents. So I really like the idea of backwards building. If you look up backwards building, even backwards building plus instructional design in Google, you'll get tons of resources. There's lots of great sites around there that you can get some info on that.
Great. Mm-hmm. And Marie asked, is there a best practice standard number of modules?
And I know that's pretty broad. There's 3 really good frameworks that I like to use. One is called the Big 3. So 3 modules with a lot of smaller lessons in them. Another one is the 6 and 6. So 6 modules with 6 lessons in them. And then another one is the very quick 9. So that's when you would have 9 modules, but maybe 1 or 2 lessons. The Magic 9 tends to work really well with technical courses. So ones where you're creating something, or if they're project-based, where you get like a specific thing at the end when you've completed it. The Big 3 works really good on personal development courses where they're asked to go a little bit deeper into maybe just 2 or 3 main concepts. And then the most versatile is the 6 and 6. That kind of applies really well to a broad range of topics. Okay, Paul says, lifetime access to course versus time limited. Which do you suggest works best? I think this is more of a personal question in terms of your business. If you plan on being in your specific industry with this specific business for a long, long time and in for the long run, then lifetime access. If your plan is to roll it into basically like a membership course or something that is continuity based, then maybe you want to cap it at like, say, a yearly cost, or, really you're going to get a lot of feedback from your people as well. So if you say, would you rather lifetime access, or would you rather it's something that you pay for yearly, and say, that frees up more funds for me to be able to constantly reiterate this and add more value and make it better each year that you go.
Great. And scrolling up just a little bit here, Nat asked, generally speaking, how important
I think it depends on the
is,
topic.
i.e., one for each lesson or module, or
I'd
one
say
longer
if it's
one
more
at
of
the
a
end?
technical topic where they need to really absorb certain specific pieces of information before they move on, so say if your topics really build upon each other, and if you're missing information from a previous lesson, then say a later lesson in the course doesn't make any sense, then I would quiz more frequently, just because quizzes do jog the memory and they do help with knowledge retention. Something like personal development, where the concepts are not so stacked, vertically on top of each other in terms of knowledge retention, you can quiz a little bit less frequently, or even, rely more on open-ended essay type questions where they're relating their own experience and being able to have them bring that knowledge into their lives more than just, a straight up quiz, right?
Yeah, and actually, maybe to build on that, we can kind of touch on sort of just engagement elements generally. You want to throw out a couple examples of what we've done for, Ecker and other projects where we incorporated those to get some other ideas.
Yeah, so an
'Cause
engagement
obviously
element
quizzes
is
are
essentially
great. Those are
anything
the
that
things you
helps
can use,
them
that are very effective as well.
retain the knowledge more. So we call them feedback loops, we call them worksheets, we call them cheat sheets, we call them templates, anything that they can use to take the knowledge that you're talking about just in a verbal, audio, kind of written way, and able to extrapolate their own data from it and apply it to their own lives. So we really love worksheets because there's a connection between what's in your head and what's in your hand. And when you write things down, it tends to be retained a lot better. So worksheets are good to be able to just have them reiterate key topics, to be able to put it through their own filter, to be able to apply it to their own specific situation, because a lot of times we're talking about some esoteric topics or topics that are just kind of conceptual that it's hard to apply to a specific person's unique situation. So when you bring in things like worksheets and cheat sheets and like workbooks, stuff like that, you really get them to engage with it more and really retain that knowledge more. And then they can get better success using your knowledge and using your courses to create change in their own lives or their own businesses.
Great, and I think we have one major last one. It's a bit longer, so this is from Nate Rose. Basically, he's asking a question about after the launch. I've completed an online course using an automated webinar sales funnel, Teachable plus EverWebinar plus Active Campaign. Launch went well. Problem is now how to get new people into the funnel because my initial email list has already seen the offer, and I can't keep constantly hitting them. I've tried a Facebook video ad to the webinar, which didn't work. Spent money which resulted in no new sales. What do you advise for keeping the funnel full after the initial launch? Is there a way to efficiently learn paid traffic, hopefully without spending too much money while learning, or to find a paid traffic expert who has expertise in running profitable online course campaigns? I'll kind of give my 2 cents on that, and I'm sure Gabrielle will have some ideas as well. Yeah, there's definitely people out there. Actually, there's a guy locally in town who specializes in, I think it's YouTube ads for info product creators, but generally people like that, the paid experts that you'd hire for this, they typically want to only work with people who have a funnel that's proven, and they'd be running the traffic through the funnel, but they would want to know that it converts first. Otherwise, typically they don't want to work with you, to be honest. So one of the things to kind of line up would be looking at the stats of the funnel that you've used and see how well it converted based on the traffic that you've run through it. If it's very effective, getting some support in that area could be a great thing to explore. Typically, they'll do it as some kind of rev share model, or you can find somebody who would do that, so that kind of minimizes your risk. But definitely get your stats first. And then the other thing from my end, there's a lot of different ways to get people into funnels. You don't necessarily need to use paid advertising. In fact, that's something, to your point, a lot of people talk about things like Facebook ads or AdWords or what have you. And oftentimes people who advocate that, they've worked very well for them, but in some cases they're very confident that it'll work, and it doesn't always necessarily work. We've actually hired Facebook ads, AdWords people a couple different times for them to drive traffic through funnels. And just for our offering for our services, it didn't work at all. Actually, I think we got like 1 email opt-in and 0 sales calls. Nothing worked at all. So that's pretty normal. Again, some campaigns work, some campaigns fail. But I wouldn't get yourself like completely restricted to paid advertising. One thing is, you said you already did run it to your list. It's not necessarily something that you've emailed it once. Now your list is burnt. There's actually other ways to kind of reiterate it to your list in a way that's not annoying. Some ideas off the top of my head would just be creating new, unique content related to the topic of the course, and sort of releasing that over time and promoting that to your email list who's already seen the product. And then on the back end of that piece of content, then you can promote the course. And then it's still like a novel experience. Active Campaign, which you said you're using specifically, has some cool features for, you can like resend a campaign to anybody who hasn't opened the email. So you could just do that. So anybody who hasn't actually seen it, there's a way to send out a campaign just to that list of people. So that could be really effective and would take you like 10 seconds to do, actually. And that might just immediately generate sales, although it's obviously not a long-term solution. And then otherwise, you can, those would be some initial things that I think you could start with that would be effective. I think there was one other thing I was going to say. Let me just check. Yeah. And that was the other thing. So you could also, and actually, Nate, if you want to sort of put in the chat any additional information you have about what is the size of your email list, how well did the funnel convert. But one other thing I was going to say is you can take the list that you have, and assuming it's substantial enough, rather than running ads to like new random people to try and get that to work, you could just upload the list as a custom audience to something like Facebook ads, retargeting, and bring people back to it that have already been exposed to it, but kind of like through a new channel. And in some cases that'll work and can be a lot more effective and cost effective than trying to promote it to new people. So those would be my 2 cents. Gabrielle, if you have any ideas on that, that'd be great as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, another way to keep getting people into your funnel as well is to, again, do that personal outreach in terms of, horizontal target markets. So maybe connecting with podcasts, connecting with other experts, do guest posting, trying to get your name out there more, and the webinar as well, right? Because you're essentially promoting the webinar, and that's going to lead them into your funnel. So the more people that you can partner with, the more people that you can get talking about it, the better for you. So definitely I do a lot of podcast advertising, or not advertising, but guest speaking, reach out for guest posts. and literally just talk about it as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to a previous point, erring on the side of promoting too much is generally better than erring on the side of like being nervous to be bugging your audience about it. They're your audience for a reason. Most people generally wouldn't mind, or if they would, they probably wouldn't end up being a customer anyways. One of the other questions that we have is from Chris. I love the idea of personal outreach to sell. How do you help a subject matter expert get clarity on their ideal student avatar? What types of characteristics make up a customer avatar persona? You want me to take this, Gabrielle, or you want to do it?
Yeah, you can go first, and then I'll add my 2 cents.
Cool. So there's definitely a lot of ways to do this. Maybe I'll start with probably the ways not to do it, or like that people do it in a way that's not super helpful, and then getting into maybe some best practices. So one thing that often people do is, like, let's say you have some kind of personal development course, and they might define their customer avatar as somebody who wants to be happier and improve their lives, or something like that. Like basically somebody who would want to buy my course. That's kind of how they define it. And that's actually pretty common, but it typically isn't the right approach, because like the things you're trying to identify is characteristics that you can screen for or find people through. So a 35-year-old man who is switching careers, is making a career transition, but has been making over $100,000 per year up until that point. Like that's something that you could define and then specifically find people through some of those characteristics, through LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, and things like that as an example. Another thing that's helpful is to find ways to define where those people would hang out together. So if you have a sense of, and this depends a little bit on where you are in the process. Let's say you've been selling your course and it's sold to like a decent number of people. Just interview, Ask by Ryan Levesque. That book is a good way of thinking about that. It's basically just interviewing your customers, sending them a survey, sending up a series of calls to understand your customer avatar a bit better. And that's going to be better generally than trying to like make hypotheses and then running campaigns, and maybe they'll work, but you won't really know for 3 to 6 months until you get the feedback. So just talk to the customers that you do have and try and draw out, again, those specific descriptions or characteristics that you could theoretically find other people through, if that makes sense.
And yeah, and just one more point on Grant's comment there. The best customers that you can possibly find are ones who have already purchased similar courses or similar products to yours. So if you're able to identify people who are already buying, like say if you have a business course, if you can identify people who are already buying business courses, then that's a surefire bet that they are a better quality of target audience than someone who, say, only invests in business books, because they're 2 different types of people, right?
A person is here.
Little one coming into the room. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful, guys. Yeah, and also Monica was asking if we help clients with marketing. Yeah, absolutely. We typically try and be a little bit selective how we help clients with marketing. First and foremost, the course creators that we've actually worked on their product directly, we start with them. In some cases, we'll work with somebody just on the marketing side of things, but we're a little bit more selective about that because, as you can imagine, a lot of people come to us and basically say, I have a product, it's not selling, sell it for me. And in some cases that can be really, really challenging without sort of the context of having worked on the product. But yeah, feel free to, I just posted the link to our calendar if anyone wants to grab a time on our calendar to explore this a bit more. Someone on our team will kind of tell you what we do and sort of explore what you do and how we might be able to help. It's not going to be quite as extensive as the consulting call that we gave away to Shayna, but it could be a helpful sort of starting point, or if you're looking for help from us, that would be a great thing to do as well. And one other thing, because I think we're kind of at the end of the questions here, definitely do check out our website and the different things that we have. Let's see, here's the website, social media, And here's, again, the cohort that we're releasing. We practice what we preach, and this is actually a good example of some of the things that we talked about today. We're releasing a first version of this program as a cohort group coaching model, and going to be interactive. We're going to do actually a lot of the things that we and have actually been doing a lot of things that we talked about today, because it works, and we'll be breaking it down into a course product at a later date. But if you want to check out our website and the different materials that we have really effective case studies and tools. There's like an ROI calculator where you can fill out a survey, and basically it'll give you an estimate of how much revenue your course could generate. There's some other cool tools that we've built out as well, and again, different case studies that you can kind of follow along with and get some new ideas. So feel free to check that out, guys, if you'd like to learn any more from us.
Grant, I just wanted to say thank you and Gabrielle for bringing such an awesome presentation. There were so many good ideas and strategies, tactics, and learnings in here. Super valuable, super helpful. You packed a lot into a not that long amount of time. So I just want to thank you both for coming and presenting to the LifterLMS audience. That was a wonderful presentation, and thank you for just sharing all that value with the community.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, Chris. And also, I honestly really enjoyed the two podcasts that we did together, and I felt like it went a lot of interesting places as well. So if any of you guys liked today's conversation, I definitely do encourage you to listen to those two podcast episodes, because we built on a lot of the things that we talked about today. And thanks again for having us, Chris.
Thanks so much.
You guys bet.
Great. Well, hope you guys have an awesome day, and we'll end the webinar now.
Thanks so much.